Hey kids, we're back. Thanks so much for coming back to my channel for another video, another true crime video. Do not adjust your color or your screen. The hair color, yeah, I should never be allowed to touch some things, and hair color is one of them. For some reason, it did not look like this on the box, and now I look like Ronald McDonald's crazy half-sister. Or if Ronald McDonald had a baby with Wendy. There you go. Anyway, I was going to get rid of it, but I figured it's already here. And it's red, so it'll come out quick. But anyway, so today we are going to do another of the Second Chance series. This guy's absolutely wood chipper bait. I mean, he's way out there. He's just one of those. Now this today brings up the death penalty. I'm never going to give my opinion on the death penalty because that just varies all over the place. You can never pigeonhole me to one in anything. I always have different opinions on every story. It's all different. However, tonight is going to be about a gentleman named Joseph Edward Corcoran. Joseph is he's from Indiana, but we're going to start a little bit farther back because he starts farther back. Okay, so we're going to start with his parents. His father was Jack Edward Corcoran. He was born August 8th, 1938 in Logansport, Indiana. He met Catherine Louise Mishler, and I know I'm cheating already. It's early. Just get the bottles. She was born February 4th, 1945 in Fort Wayne, Indiana. They got married July 13th, 1966, and they settled into the state of Indiana in the United States. That's where they stayed. They welcomed a son, James Corcoran. Then they welcomed twin daughters. And then later on, I believe it was like a little bit later in life, they welcomed Joseph Edward Corcoran. He was born, let me see, April 18th, 1975. And little Joe just rounded out the bunch. Little Joe. Listen, I'm not even going to say I have no words for this because I got lots of words. If I ever tell you I have no words for something, check for ID because it's not me. That's one thing I don't run out of, words. So anyway, let's just jump into today's story. Okay, so about Ed. I know we already started. Anyway, Joe was the youngest child, of course, and he was considered spoiled by his siblings, but we all know older siblings always say that shit just because we younger siblings are just the better siblings, I guess. I'm just kidding. But they said he was spoiled. For all intents and purposes, they were a good family. His parents were good people. They were strict. They demanded a lot, or so he thought. I didn't find any instances of what they really demanded of him. I didn't see anything where he was scrubbing the floor with a toothbrush, so I don't, but you know how kids are. Sometimes if you ask them to do anything at all, it's, and they act like you're killing them. So maybe he was just one of those kids. I don't know. But anyway, for all intents and purposes, they were a happy family. Joe was a little bit odd. The neighbor said he was odd, which is, I think everybody in these stories are odd. In April of 1992, April 14th, as a matter of fact, one of the twins came home from school and she found her dad shot to death downstairs. He had some gunshot wounds and he was in a pool of blood. She went upstairs and she found her mother. Her mother was in their bedroom. She also was in a pool of blood, and these were shotgun wounds. Jack was 53 and Catherine was 47, and of course they both died there. I believe at this time Joe was the only child at home. The rest were all over 18 because he was born later, and at this time he was 16. He was arrested immediately. There was no proof. He wasn't linked to anything. I know he had asked a few people, a few of his friends. There's a few contradictions here. In one part, they say that he didn't have any friends, that he was odd, that he was paranoid, that he was a loner, that he didn't speak to anyone. He didn't really have any friends, male or female. But then again, they say that he asked some of his friends to kill his parents. So I'm assuming maybe classmates. I don't know. but I didn't find anywhere of any friends. But anyway, so he had been asking a few people about killing his parents, and they thought he was joking, but he was not joking. So he was arrested right away, and they, of course, they implemented murder charges right off the bat. But for some reason, he was actually released the next day. I don't know. Now, remember, this is back in, you know, the early 90s, and he was a minor. So I don't know how they did it at that time. He was released into the custody of his sister, one of the twins. Um, and let's see here. The prosecution, of course, were adamant that he did it. There was no way around it. He did it. It was because the parents were too strict. I don't know how they knew this, but that was their story, and they were sticking to it. All right. So he's released, and they're saying that the investigation is ongoing. I've seen a lot of crimes. Now, minors, they throw them right in with the adults most of the time, or damn near. They treat them like adults, which is really weird, but that's what they do. So it was rumored that Joe, like I said, he was an oddball. It was rumored that he had been asking people about killing his parents and just complaining about them, just about mediocre stuff. I really couldn't find out anything major that they did, so I'm not really sure what his complaint was. However, could be anything. He was not well, so it could have been, mental illness exacerbates everything. So there we are with that. Oh, and one more thing. The police had said one of their reasons for thinking he was guilty was because he didn't show enough emotion when they told him about his parents. I hate when they do that. Everybody grieves differently. Everybody acts differently. How I act hearing one bit of news is going to be completely different than how you act when you hear it. So, and you can't win. If you don't act sad enough, then, well, I didn't even care. They must have killed him. And if you act too sad, they're overacting, and they're just faking it. So they killed him. So anyway around it, if they think you did it, trust me, they're going to everything you do, say, act, feel, touch, smile, whatever. It's all going to be interpreted around to get to lead to your guilt. So anyway, let me just go back here. I know I'm looking. Listen, I'm just going to look. If I was doing like makeup and stuff, and you wouldn't realize I was looking because I would be looking like I'm doing this, like maybe next time I'll file my nails. I don't know. Anyway, Joe did eventually stand trial for the shotgun deaths for both. It went on for 5 days. His siblings never left his side. They were steadfast. They testified for him. They knew he was innocent. There was no way around it. You couldn't tell them otherwise. He was November 6th of that same year, 1992, 7 months to the day that they had passed away. Joe was acquitted of both murders and released into the custody of his sister. Now, I'm going to read this a little bit here. An Indiana State Police investigator said they had hoped to locate a missing briefcase that contained military papers, a letter, and a weapon. There was also some pages missing out of Catherine's diary. That was just odd. They never found that, and there was no other leads. There was no evidence. There was nothing. The state police detective said that they had no intention on doing any other kind of investigation because as far as they were concerned, they had no other information that would lead them anywhere except back to Joe's door. As far as they were concerned, Joe was the man. The prosecutor had said that the jury has spoken. The case is closed. This case against Joseph was closed, but that the murders were going to remain unsolved. So, okay, there you go. Poor Jack and Catherine, right? Just fuck them. What does that even mean? The case was closed. Somewhere down the line, you'll see it. It really doesn't stay closed. It does, but it doesn't. Okay, so anyway, so Joe goes home. I imagine the 4 kids try to pick up all the pieces. It's not easy. They are young. These are very, very young adults at the time. Joe is 16, like I said. I had read one place where it said that they were bound by grief, and they all moved in together. Now again, Joe was given the custody of Joseph was given to one of his sisters, who he stays with through the entire time, and she was a very big advocate for him, her and his brother James. I'm not giving up the girls' names. I just don't want to. I don't know how they would feel about that. I know they are both very much alive and well. I hope they have moved on, but I don't want to put their names out there. Um, they're not hard to find, but I just don't want to do that to them. If they would see this and they would come on and they would want to bring themselves out, that would be perfectly welcome. I just don't want to do that to them, especially the one who has a child, who had a child at this time. I'm sure they both have them by now, but one had a child at this time. So anyway, let me see here. Life has a way of moving on, and it did. You know, tragedies. It's so weird how I remember, like when someone very close to me died, and you go outside and the sun is still shining, and people are still walking and driving and shopping, and you're like, how is all this going on when my world just literally stopped? But it does. It goes on, and people adapt to their situations, and that's what happened. Over the next few years, the kids all stayed together. The neighbors said that Joe's demeanor really deteriorated. His mental health went downhill. They said, and this is just what they thought, everyone other than the family felt that Joe had killed his parents. Let me just say that right now. They didn't hide it. They talk about it. They said that they felt that the weight of his parents' murder and the acquittal, I don't know why that would weigh on him, really weighed on his mind heavily, and it rocked his mental health, which was already shaky. So they said he was, again, no one knew what was going on in his head, obviously. They said he was odd. Again, he was a loner. We didn't speak with anyone, really. He stayed in his room. He read. He had an attic up there that he just kind of went in. No one else had access to, and there's a shocker up there later. But anyway, no one knew what was going on with him, and they really didn't say much. As far as I know, I don't know if he got any therapy. He should have been in constant therapy. Everybody should have been. I don't know if they did, if they didn't. I just know that he proceeded to go downhill very fast. Also, in 1995, one of the neighbors, I know I'm laughing, it's not funny, but one of the neighbors saw him carrying guns into the house. Now, red flag, red flag, red flag, red flag anyone? This is a kid who was 2 years earlier acquitted of shotgun murders of his parents, and now they see him carrying not one, multiple guns into the house, and I don't think anybody said anything until after the fact, like after, crazy, right? I don't know. But what are you going to do? What are you going to yell? Hey, he's got guns. He's allowed to have guns. It's legal. And he wasn't a convicted felon because he was acquitted. Okay, so let's jump up to 1997. Okay, Joe Corcoran is 22 years old. He's still living with his sister and his brother in the same house in Fort Wayne, Indiana. His brother James is 30. Again, I'm not going to put anything about the sister out there. They also live with the sister's 6-year-old daughter and her fiance, Robert Scott Turner, who was 32 at the time. Constant visitors in the home were friends of both James and Scott and the sister. There was Timothy Bricker. I'm going to cheat a little bit here. Let me see. Yes, Timothy Bricker and Douglas Stillwell, who were both age 30. They'd been there a lot. They were friends. You know how young guys are. One night they were there, July 26, 1997, they were there, and the guys were all downstairs eating pizza, drinking beer, watching TV. Guys' night, Joe had been upstairs and he had taken a nap, and when he woke up, he heard them talking. He said he went to the top of the stairs. Actually, what he said was, and this is not funny, what he said was, I heard them talking, but I couldn't make out what they said. What? What the fuck? If you need to make sure you hear what they said. He assumed they were talking about him. Now we're also talking about someone who is paranoid, but he just assumed that they were saying bad things about him. So he takes his little 7-year-old niece, who's also upstairs, and he puts her in her bedroom and tells her to stay in there. Now, this is another contradiction. I'll tell you about that in a minute. Not that he puts her there, but what he says. He puts her in her bedroom and tells her just to stay in there. Now, I'm going to warn you in about 4 sentences. We're going to start describing what happens this day, which is so terrible. I always say that, but this sucks. This is really bad. Especially if you have any kind of gun trauma in your life, you probably don't want to listen to this. You're not going to hurt my feelings. Fast forward, shut it off, whatever. But here's what happens. Joe says in court, he later said that he wanted to scare them. He wanted to intimidate them, which he sure as hell did. Here's what he does. And I'm going to read this a little bit just so I don't screw it up. He puts the little girl into her bedroom and tells her to stay there. He takes his Ruger Mini 14 semi-automatic rifle. He gets 28 rounds of high-velocity military-style 223 bullets. These bullets can penetrate steel at 1,800 feet. They're military bullets. I don't even want to go into the whole Second Amendment right to bear arms stuff, whatever, because everybody has their own thoughts on that. I'm not even going to get into it because that has nothing to do with this. So, but this is what he had. Now, here's where it gets really bad. He was furious, thinking these people were talking about him. Furious, probably embarrassed. I mean, you know how it is if you hear someone saying something. Again, he doesn't even know what he heard. All he knows is what they said, and what he heard may not have been the same thing. The sister was not home, so we have no idea what they really said. I mean, they may have been talking about him. He was odd. He was an odd duck for sure. But anyway, so here comes the bad part. He goes down the steps. There was no confrontation because there was no time. The second he gets down the bottom of the steps, he turns around and shoots his brother, James. He shot him 3 times in the face. He killed him right away. In a matter of split seconds, he turns. He shoots Tim Bricker also in the face twice. Next, he goes to Robert Scott Turner. Now remember, this is a semi-automatic weapon, so this is boom, boom, boom. This is all happening in a matter of seconds. These guns are very, very fast. He's just, and they're all sitting in the same room, so they're just, like trapped, I guess. Fish in a barrel. It's terrible. He shot Rob Turner. This was his sister's future husband, 4 times in the chest and the back. And I'm not sure if they were exit and entrance wounds, if there was 2 and 2, but it says he was shot 4 times in the chest and the back. I imagine he had time to probably try to move when he had shot the first 2 people who never had a chance. James and Tim never got to, But while he's doing this, Doug actually gets up. Doug Stillwell. He actually gets up and runs to the kitchen to try to get out. But of course, Joe catches him because he's right there and he has this gun. He shoots him, I'm going to cheeks it, I don't know if it's 2 or 3 times. He shot him 3 times in the back while he was running. And then to be sure he was dead, he walked over and he put the gun to the back of Doug's head and he pulled the trigger just to make sure he was dead. That's what kind of scumbag he was. What a scumbag, right? I mean, listen, I get he was sick, but I don't care, he's still a scumbag. So he lays down this little rifle that he has here. He lays it down and he goes to the neighbors and he tells them to call the police. So they do. When the police get there, the guys are still sitting in the same positions. They never really had a chance to move. They're still on the couches. Their beers are still there, although I'm sure spilled. The pizza is still there. The TV is still on. It was like nothing happened except he wiped them out. He just killed them because he thought they were talking about him. The scene was described as being so bloody that it took, and I didn't understand the sentence because it said it took forensic teams 2 days to mop it up. I don't think forensic teams mop up. I think maybe they mean they called someone in because they have to call people who clean up murder scenes. You can do it yourself, but why would you? You call someone in to do that for you. So they said it took 2 days to mop up all the blood. That's how much there was. But you're talking 4 grown men. 4 grown men. I mean, these were young men, 30, 32. They were young, healthy men. Anyway, Joe's arrested again. 4 counts of homicide. Have a seat, son. Idiot got no bail. Thank God. Frickin' jerk. They searched his room. This guy. This fucking guy. They searched his room and this attic. He was the only one who had access to this attic. And let me read to you what they found. 30 firearms, over 30 firearms, several munitions, explosives, guerrilla tactic, military issue, books, and a copy of the Turner Diaries. The Turner Diaries. Yes, the Turner fucking Diaries. Do you know what they are? Turner Diaries, in case you have not heard, it was written by the former leader of the Neo-Nazi National Alliance. I'm not going to tell you his name because fuck him, right? He, his last name was Williams, by the way. He was a brilliant, brilliant man. This guy was brilliant. He was well on his way in the academic physics world. He was a college professor. He was brilliant. And one day, I don't know what the hell happened, but he just makes a left turn and jumps headfirst into the Nazi party. How the fuck does that even happen? Who does that? I don't even know how that would happen. I mean, that was just like a crazy thing, right? Of course, I believe this happened back at the time of the biggest civil rights movements as well, like back in the late 60s. So, that could explain a lot because he was an idiot, Anyway, so this is what he does. The book was written as diaries of a member of an underground white supremacist warfare, whatever, an army. The guy's name is Earl Turner, hence the Turner Diaries. I'm going to look a little bit here. It describes the Aryan Revolution that overturns the United States government. In the book, Turner's guerrilla unit does crazy shit. They detonate a homemade bomb at FBI headquarters. If this sounds familiar, this was also the Bible for Timothy McVeigh, who did the Oklahoma City bombing. Scumbag. This was the inspiration for him. Good job, ass fuck. Anyway, so Joey here, he pleads the usual insanity shit. By this time, we know it's right. This guy is off. He's off his rocker. He can't even assist with his defense. That's how bad he is. He is diagnosed as either paranoid, I know I'm going to say this wrong, or schizotypal, schizotypal, SCHIZOTYPAL. I think it's the same thing as paranoid. I think it's like untrusting paranoid. But he's diagnosed with this personality. So, and again, I don't know if you watched the first video with the Ed Gingrich thing, where that asshat at the end from Yale said about paranoid schizophrenics, how 99.9% of them are nonviolent. Here we are, third video in a row, Anyway, so he couldn't help out with his defense because he was off his nut. But first thing he does when he's in jail, starts bragging about how he killed his parents. He did kill his parents, and he got away with it. I don't understand it. I mean, the police had to be lacking as shit back then because, they didn't get anything. They got nothing. Now they could. Now if you fart in a room, they can get your DNA. I mean, you got to be careful. Like they get it for whatever. So, of course, I'm not going to go through the whole trial because the trial is just, as I always say, everything I already told you. It's just brutal. It goes into his mental illness, and everybody comes out of the woodwork now and tells you after the fact, oh yeah, he was odd, he was nuts, he was this. We all knew, but nobody ever said anything. In fact, this is when we find out that someone saw him bring guns in the house. No one even said anything about that. Why do you not go like, hey, James, Side story, real quick. I did read one story that the sister had. She gave a couple interviews. God love her. She's gone through it. She did a couple interviews where she said James was his biggest defender. But James said after they all moved in together, James told her all the time that he thought Joe was going to kill him. He never knew why, what, who, what, where. But he kept telling her that one day Joe was going to kill him. And he was right. It's scary, right? So he's convicted on all 4 counts. Should have been 6, but because he was already acquitted of the parents' murder, they can't arrest him now. It's double jeopardy. You can't do it. Too bad. Now, I'm not sure how familiar you are with how sentencing works in cases like this, death penalty cases. Of course, I'm sorry, I didn't even tell you they went for the death penalty. There's aggravating circumstances which make it worse, and there's mitigating circumstances which make it better. The only aggravating circumstance they had was the fact that it was 4 people. Now, for the mitigating circumstances, of course, they said his, let me read, I don't want to get them wrong, let me read. Extreme mental emotional disturbance, capacity to appreciate criminality impaired, which means he didn't understand, how did he not understand what he was doing was wrong? I don't get it. You put the gun down and say, call the police. You know something's wrong, And if you hide your niece, and I'll tell you in a minute about that. I was telling you about that. Hold on a second here. Anyway, it says, unable to assist defense because of mental illness, fully cooperated with police, admitted guilt, good behavior in jail. Ooh. Protected 7-year-old niece before murders. No significant prior criminal conduct. Did we forget about his parents? But he was not convicted of those, so we can't use them. He was remorseful, and he's young. He's only 22. That would work in the opposite for me, because I'd be like, this fucking dude's 22 and already he's gotten down. He's got 6 people on it, under whatever. He's got 6 people, So, and he gets a cookie for not killing the niece. He says, in his defense, he said that he just wanted to intimidate them. He did not want to, he was not going to kill them. He wanted to scare them. Yet, his contradiction was he had already said that he put his niece in the room to protect her from the gunfire. So he knew he was going downstairs to kill them. So there's your premeditation, which should have been another mitigating factor, but it wasn't. Anyway, the judge did listen to that bullshit. On August 26, 1999, he was given the death sentence, and he moved into his new digs over there on Indiana Death Row. Now, he has been off and on, in and out of the court, crazy. When you get the death penalty, whether you want to or not, you get an automatic appeal. They just do an instant appeal. They have death penalty attorneys. You get an appeal. Some people have been voluntarily executed, which means they give up all rights to any appeals. They won't let anyone file for them. When that happens, sometimes people will come in and file on their behalf without their permission, because they start doing all these mental tests to see if they're mentally competent enough to make that kind of a decision. I mean, they're literally ending their lives. So, as for Joe, when they sentenced him, I'm going to read you his apology. Nothing really makes sense with him. I'm going to read it to you because he's an ass clown. But here's what he says. And he read it in court. I can sincerely say I'm sorry. Not sorry for me, but for those who have good reason to hate me, because I am a horrible person. I don't know why I'm loud. It's not funny. I am a horrible person. Yes, sure. A person who needs to be punished. Though it may not be seen by others, I grieve in my own way. My sorrow remains, and I am burdened with its shame. My actions were shameful, and they fill even me with contempt. Shut up, frickin' jerk. So he did waive all of his appeals. They allowed him to do that for quite a few years. His mental competency has just been such a huge issue that he's always in and out of court because of that. Because every move he makes, they have to go to court and say, is he mentally able to make this kind of a decision, whatever the decision is, So it's been dragging on for years. Finally, though, in 2003, he did decide to start picking up his appeals. So they started filing them. Believe it or not, they could deny their appeals, deny any assistance in their, waive their rights to appeals for 50 years. And 5 seconds before they put that needle in their arm, if they say they want their appeals, they're entitled to them and they will get them. I guess that's a good way to drag it out. You get an extra few years. So, anyway, in 2016, he said he didn't think, 2006, he was still, I guess, high on the fame. He said jail wasn't so bad. Here's what he says. Why give such a person life in prison? If they kill someone, they've won the lottery. They get free room and board for the rest of their life. Therefore, it is my opinion that the death penalty is a just punishment for murder. Really? You think? Shut up. 2007, Mr. Just Punishment is still fighting this just punishment, and it is actually overturned. There was something going on with the prosecutor. They said something, if I remember it correctly, when they offered him a plea deal, they had offered him, they had told him that he would have to take a specific kind of trial, because you could do jury, you could do bench, you could do, but there was some kind of a discrepancy in there, that they had done something they were not allowed to, which they claimed said would not have made him eligible for the death penalty had they stuck to that, or something like that. So what happened was, they overturned his conviction and told him they had to resentence him, but that they could not resentence him to death. He could not be sentenced to death again. So everybody's upset. Now we have these families of all these murder victims, and, they're sparing his life. No one's happy about that. However, prosecution wasn't having any of that shit, and in 2010, they took it back to the U.S. Supreme Court, who reinstated his death sentence. Back on death row he is. It's where he should stay. In 2015, it was affirmed, and again, that is where he sits. As of 2016, in July, Joe has exhausted all of his appeals. He has no more appeals. That's it for him. I do not know if he has a current execution date. There has not been an execution in Indiana since, I believe, 2009. All of the states that have the death penalty go through all of these things. I know they had an issue with, someone had said that they were using expired medicine, which would hurt. I guess they said it hurt. I don't know. I just find it a little odd that we're so worried about hurting someone who hurt someone else. I mean, brutal murders, and we're worried about them getting a little pain in their arm. But again, that's not my call. So there was some lawsuits about that. We always have the multiple lawsuits every couple years saying that it's unconstitutional, that it's inhumane, that it's this. And then sometimes, I don't know if you've ever seen any, there are some executions that go so wrong, and they really are brutal. There was one guy, I believe his name was Tiny. They called him Tiny. He was huge. I want to say Florida, but don't quote me. Just look up failed execution. Only if you want to. If you're not really ready for it, don't do it, because it sucks. It's really bad. But anyway, so back to Joey here. His day is coming. They will execute him eventually. His sister, who luckily was not home that day, and she's the mother of the niece and the fiance of Robert Turner, is glad. She actually said, speaking about the slaying of her brother and future husband, which all happened while her 7-year-old daughter cowered in fear upstairs, she said, "I knew right then and there he killed my parents. I've cried so many tears, I'm dry. I hope he fries. Everything is gone. He has ruined my life. I just think he's sick. I don't know what made him do it. I don't know what it was." Well, he is sick, this is what happens. I just can't imagine what she's going through. I mean, I'd want to punch him in the throat just because that was my child upstairs. I can't imagine what she goes through. This was a long time ago. It was in 1997. So we're talking, 25 years in that area. So the child must be like 32 now, and, I'm sure everybody's moved on somewhat, but how do you move on from losing your fiance and your parents and your brother and their friends, and I don't know how you would even go past that, but I just hope they all do. I did not find any pictures of any of the guys. I only have pictures of gravestones, so I will show those, morbid as though it may be. But I do want to say a couple things about the guys. Douglas Stillwell was 30, of course, when he died. He was a service technician for the cable company. He was an Army veteran, and he served in the National Guard. He was survived by a wife, a son, his mother, 2 brothers, and 1 sister. Timothy Bricker was a tree surgeon. I don't know how they do that. God love him. That's scary, climbing up on those trees. He was a tree surgeon. He was survived by 1 daughter, 2 sons, parents, step-parents, and 2 brothers. James Corcoran, the brother of Joe and the sister, was the owner of a painting company. He was also a Marine veteran like his father, and he was engaged at the time of his passing, which is very sad for her. Robert Scott Turner was survived by, of course, his fiance and the 7-year-old child. I imagine his parents and siblings, but I did locate the obituary and then I lost it. So that's where I'm at. But that is the story on Joe Corcoran. He is on death row, which he should probably stay there. Um, that's it for tonight. I do have the next story that's coming is also a death row case. However, it is about a guy that I don't think should have been there, but you know. Anyway, so that's it. Thank you so much for coming back. You have no idea how much I appreciate this. I am hoping to get some more content up here and then start sharing the links. I have this great group on Facebook. It's called the Luzerne County Crime Update page. There's 30,000 people in there. They are the best people in the world. I can't wait to share this link with them so they could start coming over to the video. I'm going to start doing some extra stuff for them as well. But in the meantime, thank you so much for coming, and you all have a great night.